Are you interested in starting your own cash PT practice? Maybe a little side hustle practice right now because you're bored with what you do at work and you're seeing massive volumes of patients. I found the most success by going this route through a practice in a gym. And this is why I started the Gym PT Blueprint. The Gym PT Blueprint is really a program that shows you exactly how to be successful in the cash model, whether it's a side practice or you're diving head first like I did. This shows you exactly how to set your finances up correctly, how to set your practice up correctly, how to sell things, how to market yourself, and how to really convey your unique value to other people so that they'll want to pay you for it. If you are struggling to figure out how to set your practice up correctly, or if you're in practice and you're not making it at least 5 figures a month at this point, you really should check out the Gym PT Blueprint. Head over to drdannymattei.com/products. That's DRDANNYMATTA.com/products to take a look at the Gym PT Blueprint and see how this program can help you become successful. So here's the question. How do physical therapists like us, who don't want to see 30 patients a day, who don't want to work home health, and have real student loans, create a career and life for ourselves that we've always dreamed about? This is the question, and this podcast is the answer. My name's Danny Mattei, and welcome to the PT Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey, what's going on, guys? Doc Danny here with the PT Entrepreneur Podcast. And today is going to be a little different than most of the episodes we've had so far coming out. There's no interview today. This is going to be kind of on a topic that I think it fits both personally and business related. But going forward here in the next few weeks to few months, we've got some pretty interesting interviews lined up that have to do with not necessarily physical therapy, but things that are associated with it. So, for instance, a friend of mine who's a personal injury attorney was going to jump on the podcast with me, and we're going to talk about all things personal injury and how that relates to physical therapy. So, how do we avoid being sued? Things like that. Like, what are the red flags or yellow flags that there might be? What do we do with motor vehicle accident patients? Which ones are the best ones for us to work with? Maybe they have really good reimbursement versus other ones that do not. So actually, getting an idea from a legal standpoint of how we can best safeguard ourselves from something like malpractice suit. And then a friend of mine who's a designer, she does digital design, web design, logos, branding. What's your brand say about you? What's your logo? What should that thought process go into that? We're actually going to have some digital marketing specialists come on and chat about what's working, what's not working, and actually give you an idea of what these specialists who are extremely good at what they do and would cost a lot of money to consult with. We're going to get them to jump on the podcast and actually allow us to ask them, ask some questions that would help our listener base. So today, as I was talking, I was looking at some of the other people that I want to bring on. One of them is a CPA. So I want to have a tax attorney or a CPA come on and talk about some tax specific stuff, some formation of companies, and questions people have about that. And this can be a bit of a boring topic because I want to talk about one thing in particular, but I want you to understand that the understanding of money is incredibly important in order for you to keep as much of it as you can going forward, right? And many people have very, very poor relationships with money. That could have come from your parents. That could have come from their parents. That could have come from the fact that, you never really had anybody teach you about money as you grew up. Maybe you didn't have a job. Maybe you never really had to save for anything or work towards anything. Whatever it might be, maybe you associate money with bad things. Maybe you associate it with it's just chasing money, you're greedy or whatever it is. And, the more money you make, the more people you can help, the more effect you have on others. And it's when we interviewed Jesse Itzler, who is a billionaire, by the way, on the Doc and Jock podcast, we had a chance to interview him. He wrote a really good book called Living with a SEAL, where he hired this Navy SEAL to come in and live with him for 30 days and train him for an ultra marathon that he was running. And he said, he and his wife, who's Sarah Blakely, who started Spanx. So it's a billionaire family. These guys have more money than they could probably ever spend. He said their money's good for three things. He goes, it's fun to make, it's fun to spend, and it's even more fun to give away. And I 100% agree with that. Like us being able to actually give money away to different organizations or do things like buy dinner for a homeless shelter and go and feed them. And like that's amazing. But we couldn't do those things if you were broke. If your business is broke, you can't help others, right? So you have to look at money as a vehicle in order to help others, in order to hire people and be able to allow them to work for somebody that they really enjoy their job within that company and that culture that they function within. You have to be profitable in order for that to happen. And one of the questions that I get frequently is about loans and student loans and debt. And these are things that can be incredibly challenging for people to work through, right? And I think for us as PTs, you can come out of school heavily in debt. You could definitely be, if it's just grad school, we're talking about anywhere between $50,000 and $120,000 in loans by the time all is said and done. And I went to school in the Army's program, which means I owed them time after I graduated on active duty in order to pay that off. But I didn't have any student loans for physical therapy school in the process. Now, I had loans in undergrad, and so did my wife. When we got married, we consolidated those things. And luckily for us, when I went into the Army, they have what's called a commissioning loan, which is basically USAA, which is a bank that works really closely with the military, offers new officers a $25,000 loan at 0.9% interest. So it's almost free money, right? So my wife and I actually took that, consolidated some loans, paid off our student loans with that, and then we just paid that down. And we actually paid that down. It was a 5-year loan. We ended up paying it down in 2, and I'll kind of talk to you about the strategies that we used to do that. Not that it was like a high interest loan by any means, but we just do not like to have debt in any sense of the word, aside from, I guess, a mortgage, and that's something that you could still work to pay down faster. It just depends on your cash flow, and that's the big thing that I want to talk about today is this idea of cash flow and freeing up more available cash for you each month. So when people look at loans, they usually tell you is, hey, pick the loan that has the highest interest rate and try to pay it down as fast as you can. Now, if you have some sort of ridiculous credit card debt, let's say you have $10,000 in credit card debt and it's like 20% interest on that credit card, then yes, I would say that's probably your best bet is to pay that bad boy down as fast as you possibly can, because the interest itself will accumulate to the point that you will just have a very difficult time crawling out of that sort of debt. Okay, but let's say you don't have that, and let's say you have something like most people have, which is usually a car loan and a student loan. All right, and you've got say you're renting a house or whatever it might be. But when we look at which one of these we try to pay down faster, there's a concept called the cash flow index, which really allows us to understand which one of these loans would be more beneficial for us to pay off faster in terms of freeing up cash flow. So cash flow is how much money do you have each month that's free for you to use towards whatever you see fit. Okay, so in a business, cash flow would be, let's say, we made $20,000 in gross revenue. So before taxes, before any expenses are paid out, before we pay our employees or anything like that. Say it's $20,000. And then after all your expenses, you had $2,000 left. Okay, so your free cash flow for that month is $2,000. Now, let's say there was something that you could do to improve that by $1,000. Maybe it's you paid a loan off that was $1,000 a month, and now it's gone. So that $1,000 a month goes into your free cash flow. So now you have $3,000. So what does that mean? That means, oh, cool, maybe we can look to hire somebody else, or we can start reinvesting in new equipment, or whatever it might be. It allows us to decide what we want to do with that. But that's cash flow. That's how much cash we have that we can put towards investments or paying other things off. So when we look at a cash flow index, if you look at on a scale of 0 to 300 is how we basically break this out. So if you were to draw a straight line, draw 0, draw a line, and then draw 50, draw another line next to that, draw 100, draw another line next to that, and draw 300 at the end of that. So it should be kind of across a page, 0 to 300 with 50 and 100 in the middle with little dashes in between that. So that first zone, 0 to 50, is what's called the danger zone. Okay, so that's the loans that you want to try to get rid of as fast as you can because it's going to free up your cash flow. 50 to 100, that's sort of your cautionary area, so right in the middle. And then 100 to 300, that's sort of the freedom zone. That's the area that you're not too worried about those initially because they're not going to free up a lot of cash flow for you, and they're probably much bigger loans compared to what the monthly payment is. Okay, so your cash flow index is basically the balance of the loan divided by the minimum payment. Okay, the balance of the loan divided by the minimum payment. So let's give you an example. And I looked this up, and the average that I found for physical therapy students was about $80,000 in loans, and which lines up with the federal student loans that are at a 6.8% interest rate over a 10-year period. So it's 120 months. Okay, so let's say you had a loan payment of $920 associated with that, which is what it would roughly be if you had a 10-year loan. So if you were to take that and take that $80,000 and divide it by 920, which is the balance of the loan, $80,000 divided by the minimum payment, 920, it gives you a cash flow index of 87. Okay? So 87, which is fairly high. All right, so it's definitely not really, really low and something that we would be the most worried about. Now, so remember that. So you have 87. All right, now, if you were to take, let's say you had a car payment that was, you bought a $25,000 car and you have $15,000 left on that loan, and you're paying $450 a month on it at this point, and it's 1.9% interest. So a fairly low interest rate compared to your student loans, which are 6.8. But if you were to take what you have left over, $15,000, and divide that by the amount you owe, $450, your cash flow index number is 33, which is much lower, meaning that's what you want to get rid of faster because it's going to be quicker for you to free up cash flow that you can then roll into other things. Okay, so think of it this way. Let's say you had an extra $400 a month that you could put towards helping pay off debt. Which of those two would you put that $400 towards? Well, some people would say you would put it towards the student loan because it has a higher interest percentage. And I would disagree with that. I would tell you you'd be better off to put it towards the car payment because you can pay it off faster. It has a lower actual cash flow index of 33 versus 87. And that means that if you take that money and you put it towards it, you'll pay it off significantly faster. So if you paid that extra $400 towards that $15,000 that you have left on your car payment, you would pay it off in about 16 months. Now, after those 16 months, you would have $850, which is the $450 you owe on the car each month, plus the $400 you're putting towards it. That's $850 that you could now roll or snowball. This is a Dave Ramsey concept, the idea of a debt snowball, rolling that money into what you're paying for your student loans. So 16 months to pay your car off instead of another 3 years, all right? So 36 months. And then from there, we get your student loans paid off much faster as well. So if you were to take that, pay your car off first, take the money from that plus the extra $400 you're putting towards it, and now put that towards your student loans each month, you would have your student loans paid off in a total of 63 months instead of 120 months, which is half as long as you're supposed to pay for it. And you would save yourself equivalent of about $15,000 in interest that you would normally have paid on the actual balance of those student loans. So that's quite a bit of money. And it's a different way of looking at it. It's something that is, from a business standpoint, this is the way that we make decisions about debt. And at this point, we have no debt in our company anymore. But 2 years ago, when we had build-out loans and equipment loans, and we had made this big expansion, it was something very new to us because we never took a loan out at all to start the practice. We started and bootstrapped it, and we didn't need to take any loans out. So as we looked at it, we hated having any sort of debt in the company. So we actually looked at, okay, well, what loans have the lowest cash flow index? Those are the ones we want to get rid of the fastest. So that's what we did. We took the lowest. Once we paid that off, we took that money, we rolled it into the next lowest. Once we paid that off, we put that money into with the rest of it and put it into the third. And then those are the 3 loans we had, and they were gone. So that is equivalent to kind of what we did in the business, but you could also do this personally with student loans. And here's the other thing. Now, once you have that paid off, you basically have, let's go back to that example of your student loans and your car loan. You basically have $1,800 a month that you're used to paying out to pay this student loan down as fast as you can, to pay this car off as quickly as you could. You have $1,800 a month that you now can put towards whatever you want in this setting, anything you feel like you want to work towards. So maybe it's saving for a house. Maybe it's that you want to start dramatically increasing your retirement savings. Maybe it's the fact that you want to really ramp up your emergency fund, which most people should really start by having a $1,000 emergency fund, which means you have a fund there in case of an emergency. It's pretty straightforward, right? So your car breaks down. You're not going to go into debt to fix that sucker. You actually have $1,000. And once you have that saved up, then you can start working on some of this cash flow index kind of debt snowballing. But maybe you want to bring that up to 6 months. 3 to 6 months is kind of the standard recommendation in terms of an emergency fund. All right, so that could be the first goal that you have. It could be maybe you own a house and now you're looking to add a second home in a rental property. It's sort of up to you. Maybe it's reinvesting in your own business. Maybe it's reinvesting in your own education and learning how to do things within your business that can generate a lot more for you. I think that's never a bad investment. I'm a huge proponent of reinvesting in yourself. No one's ever going to take that away. It's not a depreciating asset either. You're going to buy a super nice car. Well, guess what? In a year, it's not going to be worth what it was when you bought it. So if you spend $10,000 on, some mastermind group or business education, workshop series or whatever it might be, no one can take that away from you ever. It's up to you whether you implement what you learn or not, but no one can ever take that away or depreciate that in any way. That's knowledge, it's information, and that is incredibly valuable. And that's one of the reasons why most of my business owner friends are in multiple mastermind groups and or are associated with multiple entrepreneurs groups and it would shock some of you to know like how much many business owners actually spend on their own knowledge every year. Tens of thousands of dollars at a minimum. I know people that go bananas for stuff like this, then probably go overboard and are anywhere between $60,000 and $100,000 a year in mastermind groups and self-education. And granted, they also have businesses that are 8-figure businesses, right? So it's relative in one sense, but they're reinvesting in themselves because that is the most return on investment that they've been able to find. versus a stock or an investment property, whatever it might be. So the first thing is you've got to really try to get your finances in order, because it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. And debt is an incredibly challenging, difficult, and stressful thing that affects a lot of people. And especially if you come out of school and you got 80 grand in loans, I totally get it. You've got a lot of stress associated with that. You got a big number you got to cover every month. And if you can get rid of that as fast as you can by really isolating on this cash flow index, what is the best loan for you to pay off first, to be able to then roll that into paying down your other loans as fast as you can, save yourself a lot of money, get things paid off in half the time that it's supposed to be, and then you're debt free. And that's a good feeling. And for many of you that have financial debt right now, you're probably looking forward to the day that you literally don't owe anybody anything. And I remember the day when Ashley and I paid off the student loans that we'd consolidated, and just how awesome that felt. It was great. And not only that, we had that money we were used to spending and paying out for that, and then we instantly rolled it into retirement savings at the time for us, and in a Roth IRA in particular. So that was a great feeling. It wasn't like we were taking any more money away from us. We were used to that money being gone. It didn't affect our quality of life one bit. So utilize it effectively and look for not necessarily just the highest interest rate, but what's the best way to free up cash flow, and then for you to then roll that into paying down other debts faster, and then eventually becoming debt-free and feeling how good that feels and how much less stressful it is to not owe anybody any money whatsoever. So, guys, I hope you got something from this. I hope it's maybe a little different way for you to look at paying down those student loans in particular, or if you have some other sort of loan, definitely take a look at it. It's a cash flow index is what this is called, and looking at debt in a slightly different way and how we pay that stuff down. Like I said, super important for us to be financially sound. You may not have learned any of this in school. I didn't. It's a lot of stuff I had to learn along the way. And money, like I said, many of us have really poor relationships with money. We think that we can have just incredibly lax buying habits without any sort of discipline. And for a lot of people, they're very undisciplined with their finances. And that can lead to a lifetime of struggle, no matter how much money they make. Because, I know people that make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and they are paycheck to paycheck, because the bigger their paycheck gets each month, the bigger their lifestyle becomes. And they always got to have a little bit nicer car. So, man, you know what? The Honda isn't cutting it anymore. I got to get a Porsche, right? Whatever. I live in a really nice house, and it's just not nice enough anymore. Got to get the next thing. Got that 50-inch TV. Now I got to get a 65-inch TV. These are all silly changes, things that don't really affect our life in any way, and you don't want to get caught up in that, right? So fiscal responsibility, maybe not the most, sexy topic, but guys, it makes a huge difference. So think about that. Pay those debts down, look at the cash flow index. And like I said, I got some cool specialists coming up. CPA is definitely one of those people we're going to talking about taxes and how to structure your finances in a really effective way so you can keep more of what you make and reinvest that in a smart and effective manner. And as always, guys, if you have any questions for me, please reach out at Danny@athletespotential.com, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. I always love hearing from you. And as always, guys, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.